All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. Hello and welcome to our podcast. Yes, I came in with a full swathe of hellos there. But yes, welcome back. A new episode here today. I'm not even going to bother giving this episode a number at this point because I feel like I get disorientated every time
13.
I start giving it a number. But what... Okay, 13. I can see it's 13, but you never know when we go and schedule them. Sometimes we're moving them around, so I'm going to keep it real simple. But what I will say is this is, in our opinion, or it is, the second in a series of news caffeine-fueled ventures news episode. All right, yes. So I had a little look. Rory's dying over here. But what I will say is... apologies in advance to anyone that is joining us on YouTube. This will be the first time I've got my lighting right, so you can now see my ugly mug. So hello, welcome. Yes, delightful. Nice to see you all. Yes, we now know what the lighting needs to be like in here. So yes, learning curve, but we are there now. All in, we've got 4 wicked articles to go through. And just when I say wicked, I mean an array of topics. Before we start, greatly appreciate your feedback on how we're doing. And other than that, kick it off, or Rory, take us away.
Perfect. Thank you very much, mate. I'm loving the energy you're bringing today as well. This is amazing. This is post-gym energy, isn't it? Love that. You'll probably notice that I'm actually looking a little bit sort of battered myself because I got caught in the rain in the middle of town today. Went to pick up some certificates from the registry office and it came down hard on me. So literally got absolutely soaked, and because I've been working and stuff like that throughout the day, I haven't had a chance to fix myself. So we've both had a bit of exercise today.
Preach.
Cool. All right. Let me jump straight in with my first piece of news. So actually, it's not necessarily a piece of news that I've got. So it's not really an article per se, but I think this is just a kind of grouping of news that I think is really interesting at the moment. Give you a bit of background, okay? So this is coming from the angle of a new startup from ex-Uber CEO Travis Kalanick. I don't know if you remember this guy, but he's kind of like... one of the most hated people in tech, I think, probably at this point, just because he got caught up in loads of stuff over at Uber, basically some harassment suits under his name, some basically execs that came over from Google and a few other places that actually stole some secrets, and they managed to actually win some claims against Uber. And then I think the straw that broke the camel's back was that argument that he was caught having with an actual Uber driver, and he was kind of saying that you make your bed and lie in it, essentially. And it just felt like really derogatory as like the CEO of Uber to be in an Uber to say that. So this all being said, I think the idea that he's got for this startup is really, really good. And actually there are a whole host of other people that are doing it. I'm just picking on his version of it because from what I've seen, it looks like the best executed so far. But I think you're kind of going to expect that from somebody who managed to sort of create Uber. So, actually, I don't even know if he was I don't know if he was one of the founders of Uber. I just know he was a CEO of Uber. So, he's obviously got some experience either way. So the background of a lot of this stuff, which I'm gonna kind of describe first, has really come about as we've seen like a boom of more and more delivery style apps, essentially connecting restaurants that we all love with at-home deliveries. Seems like really obvious now, but for quite a while we didn't really have a place where you could just find any restaurant that you like and the chances are it'll be on one of the delivery apps. That wasn't a thing. Like you couldn't just get McDonald's delivered to your house, and this wasn't even that long ago. But now it's become commonplace with all of these different kind of apps. So you've got, I think for our American friends, and Jake, I think you'll know about this more than me maybe, but I think DoorDash is the major one, is it, over in the US?
Yeah, DoorDash, and then there is another one that I can't think of off the top of my head, but yeah, Postmates is another one. So yeah, Postmates, DoorDash, they do have Uber Eats. Deliveroo is more of a British one though. Yeah, really interesting, dude.
Yeah, so like Jake says, the big ones here over in the UK are really sort of, well, I've got Uber Eats and Deliveroo down here, but I feel like Just Eat is doing incredibly well. You sort of see, I'm assuming they're doing well. I haven't been looking at I'm not following their financials. Jake probably is like, I know exactly what their stock price is doing, but
not quite.
They're really coming up, or have been around for ages actually, but kind of getting more into branding. I'm seeing their sort of TV adverts and stuff like that. But all of these companies, right, they're creating demand for this thing, which is essentially where people are just wanting their favorite restaurant delivered to their house. And what's sort of been popping up recently is these new business models, essentially, where they're kind of called commissary kitchens or ghost kitchens, or they've got loads of different names. But essentially, it's where a restaurant, mainly driven by the pandemic, I think, really, has excess capacity. So, they haven't got people actually coming in and dining inside. So, their actual kitchen itself has got some spare room for them to be able to, utilize, essentially. So these extra businesses have started popping up where they feel very much online as if they are a physical restaurant somewhere that you're ordering from. But actually, they're either a side business for an existing business, or they're a completely new business that's borrowing a bit of space in another kitchen. And a massive example of this recently is a company, or actually it's a YouTuber, a big YouTuber. Apparently, I've never even heard of the guy, but I don't know if you have, Jake. Mr. Beast.
Oh, yeah, I actually quite like Mr. Beast, gotta be honest. He gives a lot of cash away.
Oh, okay.
He does stupid stuff like, I've, circle on a bit of, circle on the carpet, anything you fit in the circle I'll pay for, in the middle of a superstore or whatever, in the middle of like our equivalent, well, Lowe's, that sort of stuff, he's big into he's giving houses away, cars, it's ridiculous.
Oh, okay.
He's very big, very big.
Okay, I was going to say he's like the, and then I forgot her name. She's a huge reality show host or audience show host out in the US that gives a lot of stuff away.
Oprah.
Or
Ellen.
Or
you're
Ellen.
thinking of Ellen.
Yeah.
Actually.
I was thinking of Oprah, but Ellen as well. Like any of those kind of guys, it sounds like he's the YouTube version of those guys essentially. But he's done something actually that people just couldn't really understand how he did it. He came out with this thing called Mr. Beast Burger. I don't know if you've heard of this, but essentially he's got his own burger chain, right? And overnight he managed to open up 360 across the US, 360 Mr. Beast burger locations.
What?
No one could really work out how he did it. He basically did it overnight. What it turns out he did was he was doing what is actually becoming really popular now, and he was working with ghost kitchens. So basically loads of kitchens that were either had excess capacity or he could work with to kind of get in there. And you would actually find that if you tried to turn up at a Mr. Beast location, which you couldn't do any, you wouldn't be able to order from one, but say you just wanted to go and find it, you'd actually be turning up at, XYZ's Italian restaurant or, whatever it might be. And the delivery the delivery drivers, essentially, they'd be going and picking up from, XYZ's kind of, Italian restaurant. So that's how they managed to get around it. And actually it's kicked off this huge thing because it's been bubbling under the surface for a while. And those kind of in the know have, been able to do some really cool stuff with it. But what this essentially startup that Travis has come out with, he's called it Cloud Kitchens, and there's loads of different variations of it at the moment. But what he's done is he's starting up almost the WeWork of kitchens. So what it is instead he's buying up loads of locations, urban locations that kind of, in maybe retail parks that are kind of seeing a downturn, or industrial parks and stuff like that. And it's set up in the style that you're going to create they're basically going to create all these mini kitchens inside of a building, but very much set up so it's not consumer facing. So you don't have to, we've all seen, locations in the past, almost like, I think it's called Box Park in London, or different places where they have pop-ups and, there's like 60 kitchens and they change all the time, but you actually physically go there. No, this is actually where the consumer won't go there. It will just be set up for delivery services. So you could have like 50 different takeaway restaurants that, the delivery drivers are going to go, and it's very much purpose built. So it's really easy for the delivery drivers to take it away. It's really easy for somebody with a kitchen concept to go in and rent the space. Now, he's stuck in supposedly 140 million of his own dollars on it so far. And the Saudi Arabia Sovereign Wealth Fund, I think a kind of like venture capitalist fund, they've put in $400 million. So, between friends, what's that? $500 million. So it's, it's a lot of money. And essentially,
the fact that they've got the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund involved, I'm pretty sure that's the fund that might be managed by the sheikhs and whatnot. I don't know too much about it, but that's a high profile fund to have on board.
100%, and a high profile amount of money.
Yeah. Oh, mate, the amount of money. Yeah, you're right. It's ridiculous, but grand scheme of things, although he's put a lot of cash in himself, that is a lot of cash coming in from what is, I would argue, is a check mark in itself. Just having a fund that big on board that have said, yeah, your idea is good enough, we're going to give you, just nearly a cool $500 million.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it?
Insane, dude.
But I think it really points towards like people saying this is where the future is. It's kind of people want that. I think people want that experience of having food delivered that they feel like has come from like their favorite restaurant or whatever, but actually the restaurant itself is becoming a little bit superfluous because actually like people aren't visiting the restaurant anymore, or demand has started to drop down. So why do you need all of like the branding up there, all the chairs, all the wasted space, the servers, the car park that you need, everything, all that infrastructure, when 90% of your business is going out the door through DoorDash or Uber Eats or whatever it might be. It's it's really interesting.
Mate, I thought, see, the thing for me, all right, I think is insane. So we've got on one hand, we've got things like DoorDash, Uber Eats, Just Eat, all booming, right? Popping up left and right, the increase of these tertiary style services, or these intermediary style services is what I'll call them, right? So, in this particular example, we're talking food, but, we've got Uber, we've got Lyft, we've got, all of these other businesses or other industries where these intermediary style services, where these businesses don't own anything, really. They own a service, a platform, and a customer base more than they do any real estate or product, and yet they're booming. And then you've got this whole new industry, as you say, that's sparked out of that boom of ghost kitchens in this particular case. And honestly, even though you've told me about this ghost kitchen concept, I find it incredible that someone like a Mr. Beast, and don't get me wrong, dollar bills that he has in his bank, huge, but to be able to open up into that many locations that quickly is insane.
It's exactly what I thought. When I heard it, I actually, all of this came about from me watching a YouTube video. I think it was a Life Law one, I think it was, or maybe it was Wendover Productions, one of those kind of like infographic-y style YouTube videos that I quite like to watch. And the title was How Mr. Beast Burger Opened like 300 plus locations overnight. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I want to kind of look into this. And then I started going down this rabbit hole of, wow, this is such a kind of interesting space that's bringing up so much opportunity. Because if you think about it, there's this app, this startup itself, Travis's startup, and I think that there's a high barrier to entry for this one. It's like creating an Uber. So one or two apps are going to be successful in it, I say app, but it's like, it's mixing the real world with the app world, because realistically you're going to have to have some physical places to do this. But I think the opportunity is really going to lie with kind of like, not celebrity chefs as in, your Gordon Ramsays or something like that, but I mean kind of like maybe people on, YouTube stars, influencers or something, where like they go to these ghost kitchens and they do one a week. They go in and like maybe they're getting filmed while they're doing it or whatever, and demand just and it's £50 a dish or something like that. Demand's going to go through the roof, because it's like, oh yeah, your favorite influencer in the cooking world or whatever. And I'm sure there's like cooking influencers out there, aren't there? And like they're going to do one day in one of these kitchens, and if they're in one near you, you can order on the app. I think the opportunities for small business and to go and market this stuff, work with people on collaborations, I think the sort of potential is limitless.
Yeah, and I think it almost, it's so interesting. Essentially, what he's kind of opening up is you've got the marketplace, which is your DoorDash, your Uber, or whoever it is you choose to sell through. And, yes, you could do that at home if you really, really wanted to, and you got your kitchen certified and all that jazz. But if you want access to the professional equipment to knock out the volume you're going to want to knock out, unbelievable how something like this can really present itself. You got an idea. Yeah, mate, I love this. I think super cool. This could be, everybody talks about how, influencers move from one sort of thing to another, right? So it's, they were into apparel, and okay, so this is actually, you're right, this could be the next big influencer bubble.
Yeah, I really think it is. But no, man, thanks for hearing out my my little bit of news. I'm really excited. I'm scrolling down. I'm seeing big letters and some sort of some highlighted stuff here. So I'm really excited to see what you've got for us next.
Yes, indeed, man. So I'm gonna come forward with what we're calling, or not even what we're calling, because it is, right? So we got coming up here a trigger warning. Okay, so. Just going to pause here for a trigger warning regarding underage sexual content. Would be perhaps the topic. We're not going to go too far down that rabbit hole, but just wanted to take a moment and say, if you do want to avoid it, then in YouTube we'll have the point at which you can come back and join us for our next bit of news. So you'll be able to click that straight through. But yeah, for the next 5 or so 10 minutes, we're going to be discussing something that's trigger warning for underage illicit content, I'm afraid. So, okay, pause for all of a couple seconds, just give those that need to disappear or take a moment to do so. So, right, here we go. I've got to be honest, given that this was a trigger warning style topic, I really was hesitant as to whether to bring this up. Because I was, trying to work out whether this was the route we wanted to go down. But for me, this topic kind of covered on towards privacy more than it did necessarily the direct issue. So, what you'll see on your screen at points, as we start pulling it in here in post, essentially here, man, the article is around how Apple, once again, Apple coming up to be our topic here. Apple are essentially going to be, in their next release of iOS, they're going to be enabling their systems to look through your iCloud photos. Now, bear with me. So what they're going to be using is they're going to be using a CMS system that is essentially going to scan your photos. They're saying it's scanning the ones and the O's, not the image itself, and then comparing that image to a database that they have pulled together from the. In fact, I'm going to get the acronym correct. So give me 2 seconds. They have pulled the database together from. Here we go. The U.S. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or NCMEC, and other child safety organizations. So, it's essentially translating ones and zeros and hashes, and it's comparing them at that level. And it's using what they're calling a CSAM system to do this. Essentially, just as your image is uploaded to the cloud, it's scanning it at that point. And this is where I found this to be interesting, was once it identifies a problem or a problem image, it will then flag that image for human review. And where inappropriate content is found, it will be reported to the authorities. So I'm going to pause for a second there to give you a chance. I got some quotes. I've got a couple of statistics in here in a minute, but I'm going to pause for a minute for you to just
Yeah, man, there's a lot to take on because, like you said at the top, right, it's a really sensitive subject because what we're talking about here is essentially Apple scan. So tell me if I'm wrong here. Apple's scanning a user's device to see whether or not they have sort of illicit pictures of children that are kind of either missing or they feel like maybe have been taken advantage of or something like that. And then what they're going to do, and then obviously because they've got those images on their device, they might be the person that's holding that child captive or whatever, and they're going to report that to the. See, my first take, right? It feels like absolutely the right thing to do because, you're talking about children that need protecting, or children that are thought to be missing. And this person has a picture of them on their phone, so therefore, you're almost like the clue. They're kind of providing clues or kind of threads or line of inquiry for sort of the authorities to sort of go down and see if they can solve these cases. But at the same time,
I will add, it's not just missing children. It'll be indecent images. So
right.
Trying to find, I suppose, child sex offenders would be the other avenue the authorities would be using it for.
Gotcha. So either way, somebody that's committed a crime against children.
Yes.
So absolutely, I mean, first take, right? Absolutely, it's the right thing to do. I mean, you need to be cracking down on crime like this. The question I have that's come to mind is why have they and don't get me wrong, obviously, like it pulls on a certain heartstring when it's children that are being affected. Absolutely, I think, and no one's going to disagree with that, right? But I wonder what it is that made them change their tone, because I know certainly there was a while back it was in the news that Apple. This is years ago, right? Where Apple refused to unlock phones of suspected terrorists because they said it violates. They absolutely agree that in finding and cracking down on terrorism is the right thing to do, but in order to do that en masse, they have to then go against the privacy rights of millions and millions of iPhone users around the world, in order to crack down on a very specific subset of terrorists. So I don't know, man. It's a real tough one, because I wonder what made them change their mind. Why is this the issue that they're willing to kind of open up the privacy gates on?
Mate, for me, this is why this was such a, I'm going to say, interesting story, because obviously a tough topic, as I say, and I want to be conscious of that. But at a high level, I found this very interesting because it sets several precedents, and it also starts to bring the question of, just recently, just in our latest episode, right, several weeks ago, we talked about how they were using iOS 14 to hammer in on anyone that was using a user's data, right? We're talking data here. So, we're not even talking personal private images. We're talking actual data. So, a person's occupation or something along, whether they visited a website,
I think that was it,
different
man.
Style of data.
I think that was it. It wasn't even as far as to say your personal images. It was, what website did you visit?
So they've just cracked down on this in iOS 14 to try and make a user's data more private, whilst also making advertising harder. Now, the advertising harder piece is a whole different topic, and then a couple of weeks later they come out with this news, and it's like, I'm so conflicted here by what, 100% anything we can do to prevent child pornography and prevent the endangering of children, I'm all for it. I think absolutely that's the way to go. However, you have to balance that with a level of someone is entitled to their own privacy to a certain point. And as you say, that terrorist story is a great example. I think they actually caught, if I remember rightly, they caught the guy. They had his phone, but they needed to get into his phone to prove that he'd actually committed said attacks, etc. I think, and yet Apple still, because they stood on the hill and said, no, we're not doing it. We're not going to violate a user's privacy because of the precedents that would set. I'm going to hit you with just a couple of the yellow pieces here are quotes I've pulled. So a couple of things that I pulled from the article. So Apple are actually claiming that their system is so extremely and high level. They're so extremely confident of the high level of accuracy here, and they are confident that 1 in 1 trillion chance of it flagging an account incorrectly. That's what they're saying. A 1 in 1 trillion chance that the algorithm that they are using is wrong. That's what they're saying.
First, I want you to go down through the stats, but I just want to address these things, right? So their piece of PR, in order to say, this is okay, it's not affecting your privacy rights because there's a 1 in 1 trillion chance that it's gonna inadvertently flag a piece of material that's not. But I mean, on whose basis is this? Have they already been running this across everybody's phones? Because how have they actually measured the accuracy of their? And all right, they've done a sample size or whatever, and they've people that have signed up to it. My first thought, actually, as you were reading that out there, was because I was kind of thinking to myself, well, does it really matter if somebody going through somebody's pictures at the ones and zeros of somebody's pictures and then flagging up whether or not. But hold on a second, right? It's looking for indecent images of children and stuff. So I'm assuming it's looking for some level of nudity and then trying to guess an age, right? I assume that's kind of what it's doing.
Yep.
What happens if it starts to flag pictures of consenting adults that have happened to share images, and then it goes through to a human to be reviewed?
Yeah, mate, 100%. And I'll get a little crass with it. What happens if it starts, sharing your nudies? You're sharing your nudies with as I say, I don't mind. You're trying to be all delicate and polite with the adults topic. When we're talking children, we do need to be delicate. Obviously, it's a serious topic. We're talking adults, they're consenting. Sharing your nudies, I don't want to see, no human deserves to see those. That's completely unfair.
Well, and the other thing is, right, they've only just been sued. So this is, I guess, a piece of other news. I'm sure you've seen this, right, where the Apple techs leaked some images. Somebody went in for their phone to be repaired. Some of the Apple techs essentially went through this person's images, pulled out some pictures, some nude pictures, and leaked them somehow. And the person managed to sue Apple for millions, I believe. It was huge, right? It was crazy. But that was because they leaked images. And if these images are going to go through to a human being who now has access to them, it opens up. They're looking through somebody's pictures.
Well, and the other thing is, for me, right, as you start thinking about it, yes, okay, it's gone to human review, and yes, we're talking ones and zeros right now. Ultimately, that's just another area that something's being analysed and therefore is open to attack because, they are already, or not even just open to attack, open to a morally corrupt human being, right? Not a topic we're covering today, but also in the news is that Amazon have just been sued for 880,000 or 886 million, it might be. It's something ridiculous because of data privacy breach. And we're talking, customer address information at that point, not your nudies. So, grand scheme of things, got to put a bit of a light topic on that, right? So, yeah, mate, 100%. So that's how confident they are in the algorithm. But I actually agree somewhat with, we have Matthew Green that made a comment to the BBC here. And it says, regardless of what Apple's long-term plans are, they've sent a very clear signal. In their very influential opinion, it is safe to build systems that scans users' phones for prohibited content. So just to give you a content of who he is, he's a security researcher at Johns Hopkins University, so big uni in the US. And then he also goes on to say, whether they turn out to be right or wrong on that point might hardly matter. They will be. This will break the dam, and now governments will start to demand it from everyone. So this won't just be Apple in a year's time. This will be everyone: Samsung, Huawei, and
it feels like it's set. It feels like it's set. It feels like it's setting a precedent, right? It's saying we need to. For a really long time, people have been saying that the companies that provide either the technology, the hardware, or the technology as in the software, like for the Facebooks and things of this world, need to be playing more of an active role of, managing crime online. And maybe crime is the wrong word, but, we've been demanding for a really long time that Facebook does more to step in to kind of stop racism spreading on the platform and, different things like that. These are all really tough subjects because, they're pulling a line between over censorship, which I'm, frankly afraid of. If you look at some countries around the world and the way that their censorship works, it scares me that one day we're going to exit. In the very much Western world, we're going to exit net neutrality, and we're going to end up in a world where censorship is rife, and I don't. Yep. And that scares me a lot. But my question for you, mate, is: Are they using this as almost a story that people can say can agree with in order to push an agenda differently? Because my question would be, I'm assuming a lot of these networks of child exploitation and things like that are quite complex. What's the word?
Convoluted?
Yeah, like they're technically advanced. They're technology savvy. Sorry, I'm losing my words, but if they're technically savvy, how many of these people are really storing illegal images on iCloud? Like it seems, or on their iPhone, or like you'd imagine that this stuff is happening through like encrypted devices in the deep web and stuff like that. Not like just some bloke on his iPhone. And all right, I'm sure like it is happening on, and I say bloke, I should keep it agnostic, whoever it might be, some adult's iPhone. And I'm wondering how often that is actually an issue, or that they're actually going to be able to actually do anything with this, just as a cover for them to be able to scan users' data and kind of pick out things that they think is wrong.
Yeah, I think it's interesting in that regard. You're right. How often is it not an advanced encrypted situation? I think we possibly would both be surprised how often, I'm going to say, a common individual or a common approach, not an actual individual, one in every two. I mean, as in, not necessarily gone to tech savvy approach of doing things. The average iPhone would be more my point. I would not be surprised if if you saw the statistics of, it's one in every 1 million people. And those 1 in 1 million people is using a standard iPhone. I would not be surprised if it was just someone with a gross addiction or not addiction, affliction. Essentially they are needing to be helped and fixed, because that's not okay. But yeah, for me, mate, 100%. When we draw it back to Facebook, and we should move on, but when we draw it back to Facebook and all the other ones where we're asking these tech companies to have more involvement and engagement, for me, I'm wondering, are we asking Apple to play God here? Because I liken this and what we ask of Facebook, etc., to the analogy that I would come with here of, you wouldn't ask Pablo Escobar to monitor the inhalement or the ingestion of cocaine by the wrong type of people, would you? Let's be honest, because the man is motivated, paid, and was literally the drug lord himself for the cocaine empire. And if you are paid and motivated on something like that, how can you truly be the person we ask to fairly monitor the system? Mm. And okay, maybe that's a crude analogy, but, I don't know if you can ask Apple, when they are paid on data and they are paid on, devices, etc., to be the ones that are, running the fair system, shall we call it. But anyway, we've dwelled on that one. We're running long, so I'm going to turn it back to you for your next bit, man.
Cool. Okay, mate. No, I think we need to watch that one as it trends out. I think we're going to have more security topics and stuff coming up as we go through. And I think one of the things I'd like to see us doing as well, and I think we're doing this now, is kind of starting to relate that to small business and kind of what that essentially means for us. Because at the moment, what we're watching is a world where we have privacy concerns that are kind of are being played with by these major players in the market. And what does that mean for us in business? And we need to keep watching this space. Oh, I just hit my microphone there. Cool. Okay, so the next piece of news I've got for you, mate, and actually this is a piece of news, but again, I'm going to kind of walk around and talk about the actual kind of ethos and stuff behind it. So,
oh, 1 second, dude. I've just thought. So for anyone joining us back post-trigger warning, you are now clear. You are safe and clear. There are no further trigger warnings required.
No further trigger warnings. But if you're squeamish, maybe this one isn't for you. No, it's fine. I'm not going to go in any. I'm not going to go any detail. In post, I'll put a nice big "Hey, welcome back."
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. So, the piece of news that I've got to share here is that a police officer recently had his leg broken by an e-scooter collision, which sounds extremely painful, horrible. But what's kind of interesting about this one is that basically somebody breaking the law by being on their own personal e-scooter, which, by the way, in the UK, obviously joining us from around the world, I don't know what your situation is, but I think in most major countries, to privately own an electric scooter and to drive it on public roads is illegal. I'll get into in a minute how you see them around, and they're not illegal, but we'll get into that in a second. But somebody breaking the law on their e-scooter has managed to hit a policeman and break their leg is just, it seems like just one of those really awful coincidences in life that should never really happen. But at the same time, there something like 500 plus of these e-scooters in the UK had been confiscated within 1 week. So that's a huge number. 500 might not seem a lot to our friends in the US or whatever, but it's a lot of people's property that's been taken off of them. So why I'm kind of bringing this one up, and I'm going to move away from the police officer breaking their leg. The reason I'm bringing it up is because I think e-scooters in general around the world are presenting a huge amount of opportunity. Really risky, and you've got to look into it in the right way. But I think there's a huge amount of opportunity for small business here, mate. So firstly, let me hit this. It is illegal to privately own an e-scooter, so have your own e-scooter, electric scooter, and use it on public land. So you can buy an e-scooter if you want and go use it in your own fields or around your own estate if you're rich enough to have an estate. But you can't buy one, your own personal one, and use it, to drive to the shops on. Now, you see them around a lot recently, and there's a lot of people using them in this way illegally, and I think that because broadly people are thinking that that it's not being enforced. It's one of those laws that's not enforced. But what we've also got going in parallel, which is that I think what's making people think they're not illegal and aren't checking the rules, is that it's okay if your city or your town or your area is doing one of these trials. And I think in the US, actually, they've gone past trials and they're just actually a thing now. But these trials of publicly available electric scooters for hire. Now, what we have here in Bristol, in the UK, and there's loads of different cities that are doing it now, is sort of e-scooter parks. So just there, and I say they're parks, they're literally just, they'll be on pavements and things like that, but there'll be a group of them. And what you can do is you can get the app for whatever service you're using, you scan your scooter, it unlocks the scooter, and you can drive it off to wherever you want to go, and then you lock it back up again. So Here's my quick thoughts on where it presents some opportunity in business, and this is what I thought I'd like to get your opinion on in terms of do you think this is a real opportunity? Is this risky? Is this something that you would want to engage in, or do you think it's too early? It feels a little bit like the Wild Wild West at the moment, and a little bit like the kind of cannabis companies or weed companies or whatever that popped up all over the place, where there was this murmurings of legalization, and obviously it was easier to get hold of and all of that kind of stuff. So actually, like, lots of industry built around it that were providing things that weren't necessarily illegal in their own right, but they were facilitating an illegal thing. So my thought here is, I think there's a lot of opportunities for people to sell e-scooters at the moment. I recently was in London and I was walking by actually a bike shop, and they had loads of these scooters there. And I thought, I'm going to pop in here. I'm really interested in this. I'd love to know how much they cost and stuff. So I popped in and got talking with the owner. And I said, well, it's really interesting because I thought these were illegal. And he said, well, they are illegal to use on public roads, but there's nothing stopping me from selling them because people could be using them on their own private land. And I thought, well, you're kind of, well, okay, yeah, I do get that, but you can't pass a red face test and think that people aren't. I'm pretty sure you're going to be watching people ride out of your shop on them. So it kind of feels like you're almost facilitating illegal activity without doing anything illegal. And, I actually think, putting my cards on the table, I actually think these are really good. Like, e-scooters are great. I know there's been some different accidents and stuff that have happened on them, but I do think that they really help areas that struggle with decent public transport infrastructure. Like here in Bristol, we're too hilly and stuff to really have like a decent underground subway system, and our buses, we're a really old city, so it's really hard to get decent bus routes and stuff. So these electric scooters are really good for getting around on. But so you can either sell electric scooters. I'd like to get your thoughts on doing that. The other thing you could do is sell accessories, because the accessories can be used for either the legal scooters that people are using. So you could sell e-scooter related helmets, e-scooter backpacks, e-scooter reflective gears, right? That can be used legally on the public ones that people can rent, or can be used on people's private ones kind of illegally. So you can kind of there's a huge demand probably out there. So yeah, mate, I'm going to pause there for a second. I realised that I've just kind of maybe stole a bit of thunder in saying what I would do personally, but I'd love to get your take on whether or not you think it's morally right to do it right now.
All good, dude. So yeah, I think this is really interesting. I personally think this is the law gone stupid. Put it bluntly. To some extent, I think, scooters, yes, I think should be, we should find a way to get those legal as quickly as we can. They should be legalized like we've seen with cannabis and whatnot. And, I do think it's a clear distinction, though. A scooter, in my opinion, has, a set of handlebars. It's not much different to a bike, except for I don't have to sit on it and I don't have to pedal. Cool. Whereas, let me be clear, I do not believe hoverboards, as they are being called, should be legal. I think they are wieldy and out of control, 9 times out of 10. I think with a scooter, it's a pared back Segway. And I think if we're going to, allow something like that, I think we should. I love the fact that there are places testing them, replacing the Boris bike, essentially. I think we're moving into a time where, you're seeing companies pop up that are turning old push bikes into electric push bikes. Now, if we're going to allow electric push bikes, I'm sorry, we've got to allow electric scooters. They should cap out a certain, there should be a certain CC that's acceptable before they are unwieldy and therefore need to be considered a motorbike style situation. But up to a certain CC, I don't see why it shouldn't be acceptable. And I think they should be operated in a similar way to, the way a push bike should. A push bike realistically should be on the road. I know a large number of people will cycle them on pavements, and I don't think it's wholly illegal to, but, a push bike should primarily be on the road. So, I think we should be treating them in a similar situation. The moral aspect of whether or not it's okay to sell them, now that's an interesting one. I was trying to think of an analogy, because, I love an analogy, but I was trying to think of an analogy or an alternative style business. And, I did kind of jump to the cannabis kind of concept of, you have dispensaries in the US and or, you have, CBD's been obviously a big thing, and that got a bad stigma because, I don't know where I come down on the selling. I think there are plenty of things we sell or not we sell, but that are sold. Sorry, good clarification there. That are treading the line of, legality. They aren't inherently illegal themselves, but, they are, we have, although we don't talk about it, there are gun shops in the UK, right? And you need a license to wield the gun. But grand scheme of things, and in theory, it's meant to be for hunting, or it's meant doesn't necessarily mean that's what someone's always using it for. So, knives are probably the biggest example. Actually, now that I think about it, there are plenty of camping companies that are selling, large ass tactical knives. Strange examples, and yes, they're billing them as camping knives. Well, how many people are actually using them as camping knives? And, you could make an argument that how different is a scooter helmet to a cycle helmet, So, yeah, okay, I found a niche, and I'm gonna niche into that and say, okay, yeah, they're scooter helmets, but are they much different, to a skateboard or a cycle helmet? Probably not. So, yeah, I don't know, mate. I find the legality piece kind of interesting. I think it's the kind of thing that we need to just get some regulation on. Mm-hmm. But with regards to the wattage or the cc'age. But I love the concept of replacing Boris bikes with Boris scooters, as if you want to call them that. I think that's great.
Yeah, man. We'll have to see where it goes.
And maybe for the US listeners that don't know what a Boris bike is, if we do have anyone, a Boris bike is essentially just a push bike that you could, primarily in London, you could go up and you just pay, at one location. I know you have something similar in the US. It's, Cycle Go or something, I think they're called, but and you can drop them off at other locations. They're locked up, they're communal use, that sort of thing, and you just pay by the hour.
Yeah, exactly. We've got them all over in different cities in the UK, but I think the issue that we've always had with them is that, well, for me anyway, the reason I never got on, we call them the yellow bikes in Bristol. We had yellow bikes everywhere. I never have been on a yellow bike in Bristol. In fact, I think they've gotten rid of them now. But I've been on loads of Voice. I just think the practicality aspect of being able to just scan it on the app, move it away. It's electric, so it's all, it's not an exercise, if you will. So it very much feels like public transport. But I am noticing we are going a little bit long, so I'll stop it there. But I do think this is a really good area or an option to explore in future for small businesses to really get in and capitalise on some of this opportunity.
Yeah, 100%, dude. And I think what we could say there is one of the big things is maybe we just need technology to catch up, right? At the end of the day, parking has been a nightmare up until about 2 or 3 years ago, where most places do parking apps. You always had to have cash or change, right? It was never easy. So maybe we'll see, as the technology comes with it, more appropriate use with those. So, yeah, cracking. All right, dude, I'm going to just pause there for a second. You can cut this in post. Just want to check. Do you need to? Have you got a hard stop or
no? I'm all good. We can crack on through, and I don't think I'll cut that out in post. I like these real world things of us having conversations.
All right, if you're not cutting it in post, I won't call you some stupid name. All right, cool. If we're not cutting it in post, we're powering through, smashing on. So, last article here, another BBC, because just how I'm doing things. I hit the BBC website and I started scrolling through the business section, basically. We're actually coming back to another topic. So we returned to the Apple privacy topic a minute ago. I'm going to returning to the Office topic from a couple of weeks back. So the article basically says Amazon are pushing their return to Office date back. Previously you will have heard that was going to be September. They are now pushing it back to, I think the exact date was the 3rd of January, but basically next year. And the things that I found really interesting around this is, and I'm just gonna roll off what I found, and then we'll have a little back and forth for a couple minutes, I think. So, Facebook, Twitter, and Google have all also pushed their dates back to next year. There are a large number of banks like Wells Fargo, etc., that have pushed it out a month. So they're, instead of September, they're going October. Once again, we're focusing US because that's where the HQ of these businesses are. But in Amazon's case, they've actually agreed that, this will happen around the globe in most cases. So, and then the intriguing thing I found there was Facebook and Twitter are also going to be requiring their staff to have a vaccine to return to the office. Both Both of those businesses have said that you need the vaccine to return to the office. Then you've got Walmart and Uber have asked all of their management team and frontline staff to be vaccinated. Just asked. Okay. The last one that I found really interesting is Vanguard. Okay, so Vanguard are actually going to be paying staff who get vaccinated. And it's going to be $1,000. So for us Brits at the time of conversion, that was £792. Now, let's not get into the ethical debates of whether or not to be vaccinated, but I wonder what the vaccination rate would be like if you were being given £800 every time you got your vaccination. Well, not every time, but when you got your vaccination. So certainly an interesting one there. And then the last thing that Amazon have also said about this return to the office is they're saying that during their hybrid model, so you are seeing a large number of companies come in with this hybrid model, Amazon will allow corporate, so, not the warehouse or factory workers per se, but corporate staff to work from home around 2 days a week. So just found both of those to be really... or all three of those things, the vaccination piece, the return to the office, and then the hybrid piece, I just found really interesting. And, from an Amazon or Facebook, Twitter perspective, in some cases, that is a bit of a change. Some of those businesses were having people back as early as 1st of September, and they've realised with the slowing rates of vaccination and the spread of the different variants, they are pushing their dates back. So, yeah, man. Any thoughts?
Yeah, mate. So I don't even know where to start on this one. This is so interesting. Right. So like you say, I don't think we should get into the debate of whether or not it's you should have the vaccine. The thing I do want to say, though, without tiptoeing too carefully around the subject, is I think that everybody has the right to do what they want to do. And I don't think that anybody's opinion's more valid than anybody else's. I'm vaccinated. I chose to be vaccinated. I won't say whether you are or not. That's up to you to disclose.
I am.
Cool. So, we're both vaccinated. We're actually coming up to our second vaccine, hopefully at some point in the next couple of weeks. We're booked in for. So anyway, I think that people should have the right to do what they want. And I do this one when you just said out loud then about Vanguard giving, $1,000. God. Is that a material amount of money? £792. Absolutely, that's material, and I don't know how I feel about this one. I want to touch on this one because I know this isn't the bit that you wanted to necessarily talk about, but I do want to touch on this one because I think that I don't necessarily like the idea of using money to incentivize somebody to do something like this, because it takes away, especially from vulnerable people, it takes away their choice as to whether or not to do it a little bit. And obviously you have the choice to turn down $1,000, but I think when you're in a world where $1,000 is material to people, now I don't know Vanguard employees, I mean, they might get paid a lot of money and it's not material to them. I don't know. But is that filtering down to people that may be on minimum wage? And it's like in the UK, you're unable to sell a body part here in terms of you can't sell, your kidneys or whatever. You can't do that here. And that's to stop vulnerable people. It's for lots of different reasons, but it does stop vulnerable people from being taken advantage of. And I think that companies need to be really careful in the message that they're giving. In terms of saying to people, we would like you to be vaccinated, absolutely. And I think, there's a big majority of people that feel like that's absolutely the thing to do. But I think it's absolutely right that people continue to feel free to be able to do what they want to do and give the response that they want. So I think I just wanted to hit that off the bat.
Let me just follow up on that one, actually, dude, because before we jump down a different rabbit hole, I somewhat agree with you. We do, for some people, £800 or $1,000 will be a significantly material. That could be, could be for some people nearly a month's worth of work. Equally, you're right. Vanguard employees, there's a high chance that's less than 1% of their overall annual income. So, might not be huge. But the thing I find interesting there is I can't tell whether I prefer that approach, where we've got an incentive in place to be vaccinated, but ultimately the choice is still the individual's, or if we look and say, and I'm going to use the example of the NFL because it's something I follow very closely. I love the NFL, but they've gone for a sort of different tact, right? So they are, some players have lashed out and said that they feel they are being forced because, there are basically rules and regulations that are in place for these teams of 60 players, and those rules considerably get easier, shall we say, when the team reaches an 85% vaccination rate. And the other thing that they've put in place is if a team went down with a COVID issue, a whole team wiped out with COVID, and the vaccination rate was below a certain threshold, they've actually said you will forfeit the game. If it can't be rescheduled, you will lose that game. And there have been a couple of big stars. The one that jumps out to me is DeAndre Hopkins jumps out, and he basically tweeted, I didn't think I'd have to choose between a decision of my own essentially and potentially letting my teammates down. And he kind of hinted at it was enough for him to potentially consider retirement because he felt his hand was being forced. So, I do think it's worth kind of noting businesses at a whole, because that's what the NFL is. Businesses at a whole will probably end up taking one of two tacks, and whether that be 100% intentional because they're trying to force the vaccination rate up, or whether that just be a result of being cautious with those that haven't been vaccinated, etc. That's up to them, but. Yeah, there's two approaches, right? There's the carrot and there's the stick. And
I was going to say that. I was literally just going to say you got the carrot or the stick method, and which is right? Maybe neither. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think we struggle with this all the time. Even it's even across everything in life, whether it be my day job or whether it be just like personal life or it be our businesses that we have together. Mm-hmm. There's a certain amount, there's a line, isn't there, for everything, and I think there's an influence role that you can take in things, and then there's a role where you step past influence and you go into telling somebody what they can or can't do. And that's where it gets scary for me. That's where, that's what I don't necessarily like. And I'm looking at your other examples here. So I'm sorry, I'm just trying to scan through the notes, but you said a couple of sort of high flying examples where actually in order to come back to the office, you have to have a vaccine. Did you say that for one of them?
Yeah, Twitter and Facebook, according to the article, are requiring a vaccination to return to the office.
So that's an interesting one, and I'm not going to say I have an opinion either side, but you could say to some people that's a carrot, some people that's a stick. It depends on your opinion on whether you want to be back in the office or not, doesn't it? But this is really tough, and I think that businesses really have to tread quite carefully. And we keep talking about these huge examples here because they're interesting, and but one of the things that we're really tailored towards is small business, and I wonder, it's really difficult for a small business because I think I was talking to my partner about this the other day. With a lot of businesses at the moment, it's become very political. What you decide to do or you don't do with regards to protection for coronavirus and things like that, the setup that you have within your business and what you tell your patrons and your staff to do and not do. And it's really difficult because I think we're living in a world now where to not have an opinion means that you have an opinion in the opposite of the thing that people are doing. I might not have explained that very well, but you kind of, if you don't have your political flag in the ground saying that you're doing a thing, people can now assume that your opinion is the opposite thing. And it's like...
That's a good shout.
It's really difficult because I think it's okay. I sit on, and maybe in 10 years' time, I'm going to look back at this and say, Rory, you're not very, you're not very liberal, you're not very far forward thinking. But I sit on the opinion of it's okay to not have an opinion on things. That being said, this is a really serious subject and you should absolutely digest it and do the right thing. But to do the right thing in retrospect is very easy, isn't it? Because we look back and we say we should have done that. But in the moment, it's a very difficult thing to do. So I'm wondering, as a small business, I'd like to get your opinion on this. If you're a small business, you've got 10 employees. I don't know in the UK, by the way, actually, they might say... you're not allowed to do this. But would you, actually, rather than putting you on the spot like that, what I'd say is, would you say, that it's would you lean more towards giving your employees the discretion to do the right thing, or would you lean more towards, trying to facilitate the right thing? Like, where would you potentially lean on that?
It's a good question, right? So I do think it's really interesting, and the carrot or stick methodology is tough. You're right. If you don't have an opinion, you're considered to have an opinion. Now, I'm with you. There'll be times where I don't have an opinion, and I truly don't have an opinion. It's not I have an opinion in the negatory direction. It's I do think, though, there is this there is this catch between not having an opinion but having a preference. So you will do something a certain way, but also whilst doing something a certain way yourself, feeling that everybody else is entitled to make their own decision, right? So I personally got, vaccinated, and I think where possible, I'd love to see as many people get vaccinated as possible, right? But I also believe in the sovereignty of the body, and therefore people should choose what's right for them. And that's that, each to their own is the saying I always throw out, right? Now, I throw this, the vaccination is a whole different ballgame, because the more pared back version of the vaccination is masks, right? And that's where I think businesses are at the moment. They all, you're right, the political landscape of deciding whether or not they were or weren't going to force employees or customers to wear masks. And then you always hear, well, yeah, but it's not law. You can't force me to wear a mask. And the thing is, I always sit there and think, yeah, it's kind of interesting, because technically they can't, but they can, because you're going into their shop, their coffee shop, if they're a privately traded business, they can do whatever the hell they like. They can, it's no different. Telling someone they have to wear a mask is no different than telling someone in the queue at a nightclub they can't come in because they're wearing trainers. And that's a way I look at it, and you're kind of like, well, you can't discriminate, so you can't let one person in that's wearing a mask and, or not, that's not wearing a mask, and not let the other person that's not wearing a mask, unless obviously they're exempt. You can't discriminate and use masks as an excuse. You have to hold a consistent policy, but ultimately, yes, you can discriminate against someone that will refuse to wear a mask and is not exempt, because, well, they're a privately traded business. They don't have to let you on the premises. Mm-hmm. And it's no different, as I say, to smart shoes at a nightclub. I personally, if I was to decide, if we opened up a coffee shop tomorrow, my preference is, everybody wears a mask. Let's just, it's not hard. It's not that complicated. Let's just do what we can whilst we're in, this limbo land. I would probably be more autocratic with my approach than I would be let an individual decide when it comes to masks. Vaccination, I would be, an individual makes a decision, because I believe there is a difference between putting a piece of fabric around your face and being slightly uncomfortable in some people's cases, and injecting something in your body unwillingly. That's where I would draw the line. I would probably have an autocratic approach to something like masks and, hand sanitization, because I believe that's, a hygiene element you can enforce. Vaccination, I do, but do not believe any business should be able to force an employee to have.
Really well put there, man. Apologies for putting you on the spot like that. I should have worded it in a way where I wasn't asking for your opinion per se, but I think you put that perfectly, and I agree. I do agree with you. So if we open our coffee shop tomorrow, we can do it just like that. So. I think, mate, we have run a little long on this one today, and I'm hoping that, everyone is still with us, taking an hour out of your day to sort of listen to our views on things, but we're always really interested to hear yours. Is there anything you want to add there, mate, before I hit the sort of outro?
Nope.
Cool.
Take it away.
All right, perfect. So we really, really appreciate all of you being with us, and we really hope that you like our kind of newscast, if you will, our news episodes. Please let us know if you don't like it. Let us know maybe in the comments. If you do like it, give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe and follow us on whatever medium you're listening to us on today. So whether it be YouTube or on podcast. it really does help us, and it kind of shows that the effort's worth putting it in there. We've mentioned it before, we have 15% off of our coffee. That's in the show notes or the description on YouTube. Please, head on over there if you like coffee and you want to support the podcast. Until next time, we'll see you around. Take care.